From the California State Senate, this is Senate Spotlight.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Senate Spotlight, where we discuss legislative priorities, policy, and other related issues with members of the California State Senate. From the state capitol here in Sacramento, I'm Brian Green, and our guest this time around on Senate Spotlight is State Senator Robert Hertzberg, a freshman senator from the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles. He is also the newly appointed chair of the Senate Committee on Governance and Finance. Glad to have you here. Thank you for coming along. Good to see you here.
It's fun to be here. It's a little different.
Yeah, sure. Well, of course, we all say freshman with total tongue-in-cheek because you have served for years here in the lower house in the California State Assembly, not to mention as a member, but as the speaker. And you did so much, not only as the leader, but as a member on everything from environment to education, public safety, natural resources. So here, starting in 2015, you are back.
I'm back.
And we've missed out on a decade more worth of hugs, too. So
that's right.
So what does it feel like being back? Obviously, things have changed, but give me some perspective.
It's interesting. You know, I've only got sworn in on December 1st, and we pretty much were off work and doing administrative things. So it's really only my third week back in session. But it's different. I'll tell you a couple of big issues. One is just technology. You know, when I got elected, Google didn't exist, right? There was no Facebook. There was none of this stuff. And now the technology is just so dominating. You leave your phone upstairs and you go on the floor, you come back and there's tons of messages. People today, in the old days, they would fax you or send you a letter. Today, you get hundreds of emails in an hour. It's really quite interesting. Second is me. I've spent the last 12 years since leaving government traveling the world. I've been just so fortunate, and I have less patience, more interests, more entrepreneurial energy and spirit than I've ever had. So it's a little frustrating because you go back into government and it works slow and the like. So it's a little different.
That's a question I would have. I mean, notwithstanding the fact there was an open Senate seat, and notwithstanding the fact, your own ambitions in life, which is thoroughly understandable, you are a world traveler. You're an entrepreneur. You're a trendsetter. Why did you want to come back into these hallowed halls?
It's a good question. Some of us, it's really our DNA at some level. Since I've been a little kid, my dad was a constitutional lawyer. I've lived this. I care deeply about public policy. As I travel the world, I look at people's solar lights or their traffic patterns. It never left me. And even as I was traveling, working overseas on renewable energy, I was still doing California Forward and Think Long Committee and working on big reforms because I'm a structural thinker. And I was seeing what we needed to do, and I wanted to work on it. And there's certain things you can't do from the outside as a private legislator, so to speak, which is what I was doing. And you got to come in the inside. And the tax reform piece is something that's important to me, and there's a half a dozen other issues which I'll roll out relatively soon that I think are really big and really important.
Well, let's talk about tax reform. Yeah. You have obviously seen a lot of fiscal change in this state.
That's
when
right.
you were here in the Assembly, you were part of a boom and a bust
That's right.
in the economy, and then you've seen what's happened in the state in the last 5 or 6 years where we came to the edge of a fiscal cliff. The governor introduced his $113.3 billion plan. Things are getting better, more money for schools, et cetera. But I know one of the key elements of this for stability long-term is tax reform. And even in the governor's budget press conference, he gave you a shout out. I'm looking forward to Bob Hertzberg's ideas about the subject of tax reform. And in fact, there you were with perfect timing with your own ideas about modernizing California's tax structure, moving us all forward with education funding, helping the business climate, maybe raising the minimum wage, kind of a 21st century master plan, a real sweeping overhaul. So tell us about your SB 8, the Upward Mobility Act. What do you mean?
Let me just back up for a second, because when you go into government, you can spend your time, working out the fights between this group or that group and engage in the transactional stuff. Those are legitimate. They're important issues. I don't diminish them for that reason. But it's not how I like to do stuff, and it's not why I'm coming back. It's the big think. What is going on with California? We've had this boom and bust. When Prop 13 passed, we had $6 billion surplus. When Jerry Brown first got elected in 1974, a $500 million surplus that Ronald Reagan left. We've seen these horrible deficits affect people in a real way. College tuition, people's foster care, all of this stuff that matters to folks. And it creates an image that I saw overseas of this boom and bust economy of California that just wasn't good for California's brand. You can't go any place in the world that people don't know about California. It's an amazing phenomenon. So to step back and say, what's going on? And what happens is the economy's changed. We used to be an agriculture and manufacturing base. 80% of our base now, of our $2.1 trillion, soon to be the 7th largest economy again, is services. So the governor, because of the horrible hurt that Californians were experiencing, said, we're going to pass Prop 30. It's a temporary tax increase, and it's going to end. And I give you a promise, and promises matter. There's a moral obligation to the promise. So the question that I've been grappling with is, what's on the other side of that promise? What's on the other side of that bridge? We had a problem, we had an emergency, the voters responded to that emergency appropriately, we've now responded, and now what do we do going forward? The vision of that in SB 8 is about a couple of things. One, align the economy, align the tax structure with what the economy is to avoid the boom and bust. Two, support the core elements of upward mobility. We have this unbelievable divide that's happening. Democracies all over the world. It's not just California. It's not just the United States with the president talking about the tax structure. It's a serious challenge with globalization putting pressure on democracy. We have to fix it. And so this Upward Mobility Act is the two big pillars of what the promise is. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, we all believe in the core values of the promise, which is an upward mobility, an opportunity for you and your family, and that's done with education and building infrastructure. So we're using the new money, and then the idea is to reduce personal income taxes, to get rid of some of the volatility on smaller corporations, reduce the tax, as you suggest, deal with the minimum wage, but it really is a comprehensive view. It has a number of layers. It opens with the idea of the sales tax on services, but it's a much deeper think about a restructuring to really take California and look at it and say, where are we going, and create a system that will capture that energy, capture that imagination, and continue to keep California on the cutting edge. That's what we got to do.
Now, it is a bigger thing, but I want to drill down because this is where things are going to affect a lot of people. In addition to minimum wage, it's those taxes. What are you going to tax? Obviously, I think you've said education, you're not. Healthcare services,
services are you going to tax? So what does that mean? What does that mean? No healthcare tax, no tax on education, and no tax on small businesses. Right now, we're opening with 100,000. It might get a little different, but no taxes. So if you're, running around and you're coaching Little League and making a few bucks, or you're a personal trainer, you shouldn't have to deal with the garbage of administration of collecting tax, right? That's not what it's about. But if you're a lawyer, if you're an accountant, if you're an engineer, if you're a political consultant, right? Those are services which should be taxed. Why is it that when you go out and get your taxes done with H&R Block, you pay no tax, but if you buy a program, you pay tax? Why is it that if you watch your Lakers game, I'm an LA guy, on television, there's all sorts of taxes associated with your TV and getting cable or getting your other systems in line, and you pay no tax if you go to the game? It doesn't make sense. Is it difficult? Yes. But here's the real magic bullet in making this work. Because in politics, everybody says, oh, it's taxes, it'll never pass, either through the legislature, and if it requires through the vote of the people. We don't know that yet, depending on what gets in it. It's the Silicon Valley, the internet. People have confidence in apps. Just like TurboTax can make a program that tells you what your tax is going to be, we'll do a side-by-side. And really, at the end of the day, what people are interested in, are you telling me the truth? Are my taxes going up, or are they going down? So we're raising some dollars, we're reimbursing you in other places. It's a complicated formula, but it will all boil down to an app. And you can, city by city, county by county, community by community, what does it affect us, and what does it bring us? What's it going to bring us in our community? Because the money that we're raising, is not money to go to the state or Washington or the moon. It's local. And we know that when people have government closer to the people, when it pays for a school or a senior center, people write the check. They're not against taxes, they're against getting ripped off.
Now, you have said Prop 30 is this bridge that we've already crossed. The governor has even said, and I totally agree, promises kept, we repeal it in the next couple of years. But there's a lot of folks here in California that would actually like to see it. Now, albeit it may be Democrats that want it, but I think that was like 53% of Californians in a recent poll said, why not keep Prop 30? Let's keep it moving forward, because it actually has been a great boon and healing for the state's economy.
Well, you know what? I don't know how the governor gets out and does it. He already said he's not going to do it, but it's a promise. We just saw on the last ballot. What was the ballot all about? About you can't trust Sacramento, you can't trust these guys. There was an issue on Indian gaming where the subtext was we made a deal, now they're backing down on it. I think the notion of people wanting to do that, but there's not going to be, the only reason Prop 30 passed in my judgment is because the governor went and worked his guts out to make it happen. He passed Prop 30, period, end of issue. He put his neck on the line, he passed it. He raised the money, and a lot of people were involved, but he really made it happen. And without him involved, and with now all of a sudden a lot of other people, because the governor was pushing hard, said, okay, we'll go with you, we'll trust you on this. But now that's not going to happen, and that money and that support's going to go someplace else. And the message is going to be, you can't trust those people in Sacramento, and I don't like that message.
Now, you have said this is going to be a big challenge. You yourself have said that. Key part of the pushback has been, one, if you can even get the votes for it, 2/3 votes in both houses, but also that it's too much too fast, that maybe you're better off investing more in a small incremental way in the business climate here in the state than this big whoosh of roll the dice kind of an economic boon. What do you say?
Well, we'll see how it rolls out. I just think one of the great challenges I've experienced in government is that so much of government is the Winchester Mystery House. Everybody's
Yes.
making deals and trading it out, and you get this morass of stuff that nothing leads to nothing. Maybe it's just me, don't know, and it's what I do. But I'm a big picture think. At the end of the day, do we get parts of it? Not all of it, maybe so. But you need to understand where you're going and why. What's the future look like? What's the system? And what's the steps we're going to get to go? And we need a framework. We see it in water policy, we see it in energy policy, we see it all over the place. It's all situational ethics, and I don't like that. So to me, the big think is really important because it has the framework of bringing government closer to the people, giving the money to the locals so they can have it, and where people are willing to spend it. It basically is a way to align the economy with the future. You know, people talk about Prop 13, right, and split roll. Well, guess what? You go talk to the experts in the real estate business. The average real estate requirement for an office space is 35% less this year than it was 5 years ago. You're just shrinking. There's more real-time delivery. There's drones we're talking about with Amazon. There's all this goods movement. There's more and more people working out of their home. We're not moving to a place where we're expanding commercial real estate. We're contracting it because the nature of the economy is becoming more real-time. It's stupid, in my judgment. It's not political. It's just stupid. It doesn't raise that much money, number one. And number two, it's stupid because it doesn't embrace the future. That's all. Simple.
The president, on a national level, as we speak, getting ready to do a State of the State address, he's going to announce a middle-class tax cut, seeking to raise taxes and fees on the nation's wealthiest taxpayers, large financial firms, and wants to finance an array of tax cuts for the middle class, maybe reshaping the tax code. Does it sound familiar? Did you give this idea to the president? Barack, let's talk.
I know, it's so funny. In my commercial that I did for running for Senate, I talked about, let's be bold, think of stuff, maybe make tuition free at the at UC. Right. You know, he was listening to my commercial. I don't know, but he's right. And he's right because it's a law. I know, I don't like having a Democrat talk about these things because what happens is the Republicans automatically think rich versus poor, people are lazy, I'm entitled, they're taking stuff away from me. There's this class struggle that exists. I think you can create a different language about how to articulate this message. Me as kind of a pro-business Democrat is perceived as coming in with this idea because it's about saving the state. It's about understanding the economy and how it works. When the chamber comes to me and talks about exporting jobs, I go, that happens all the time. I was in China and they're talking about exporting from China to Vietnam. Don't tell me that. Don't tell me because they're already, the accountants are already doing taxes in India. Those things happen. The markets create that. But what Barack hears, what the president has here, I knew him in the old days.
You and Barack, right?
Yeah, I knew him in the old days. So in any event, what he's got going is really trying to grapple with this larger issue about how democracies are dealing with globalization and how globalization is putting people out of work, giving people small jobs with no wages. That you just look at the charts and see what the numbers are. And it's a real problem because the only way democracies work is if middle class thrives. Period, end of issue. That's been the difference throughout human history. And so I just hope when he talks about it tonight that he characterizes it in a patriotic, an American vision, a vision about who we are and what we're about, because that's the essence of it. It's not an us versus them message. It's a message of this is the genius of America. You big business guys won't have customers. They won't buy your boats or your cars or the tennis shoes for their kids because they don't have any money. You're paying for the stuff anyway by earned income tax credits and subsidizing housing and subsidizing food and subsidizing childcare. Make the system legitimate from economic standpoints. That to me is a way to avoid the backlash but still get to the moral essence of what he's talking about.
There is so much I could talk with you about here. We are running out of time. Will you come back and let's do this again in a few weeks? Pick up where we are on SB8. And there's so much more we can talk about.
There's a lot more going on.
No,
that's the beginning of session.
It is great to talk about the big think with you.
Excellent. I'm
excited
excited
to see your eyes spark up and
it's all good.
Good.
Thank
Robert
you.
Hertzberg has been our guest, the senator from Southern California, the San Fernando Valley. Thanks again. We will have you back here on Senate Spotlight. Thank you, sir. And that is it for this edition of Senate Spotlight. We invite you to join us next time around as we discuss legislative issues and policies with the newsmakers and newsbreakers of the California State Senate. From the state capitol here in Sacramento, I'm Brian Green. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Senate Spotlight.